Welcome to Introduction to Worship Arts, Introduction, Segment 2. Worship is central to Christianity. Actually, worship has been central to humankind since the beginning of history. Humans have always worshiped something. They've always believed that there is something greater than themselves, something that had powers that they would never have, something that was out there and whom they had to, at the very least, keep from angering him so much that he would kill them. Christendom itself, Christianity, started at, Christians were first called that in Syria about 30 years after the resurrection. And it was not meant to be a good term. It means little Christ. But they took to it. They said, yeah, that is what we are trying to be, is to be like Christ, be like Jesus. As time went on, worship changed. We'll get into the some of the earliest forms eventually, but at one point you had, in the Middle Ages, everybody was ignorant. Nobody could read or write except the priests. They were the only ones who could read and write. Books hardly existed because there was no printing press. It had not been invented yet. And so every book, every Bible had to be hand copied, word by word by word, throughout the entire Bible. And it obviously was a very, very long task. So the people did not have Bibles. The royalty might have one, and the priests might have one, or they might not. That all changed, of course, with the invention of the printing press. But what also changed over time was the music. The music started off as merely chanting, and then it began to take on musical overtones, and then it began to create harmonies. And over the centuries, it became more and more complex. By the time we got to the Renaissance in history, worship was very formal. There was one church. There was the Roman Catholic Church. That was the only church there was until the year 1053, when it split from the what's now known as the Orthodox Church or Eastern Orthodox Church. But again, the music evolved, and so the monks would be the ones doing the singing, and the priests would be chanting. And it was a very stylized form of worship. It followed a very strict pattern. And people, this is what they expected. It's what they knew. It's what they understood. And so over a time, the priest might have what was called a homily. A homily is a very short sermon, if you will. But there was none of the preaching like we know of it today. That did not occur until the Reformation in the late 1500s. So worship has changed. It has become much more participatory, meaning the congregation now participates. At one time, the congregation was simply an audience to it all. So it has evolved. Well, our world has evolved as well. And one of the things we face right now is that here in the Northwest, we are among the least churched places in North America. which means we have fewer people per capita going to church here than in almost any other place in the United States. The only place who have fewer people going to church per capita is New England and Alaska. And so here in the Northwest, we have a challenge. And we have a challenge to make it relevant because it isn't. They don't find relevance. Seriously, if you talk with people about what do they think of church, don't need it. They don't know anything about it. But what they have seen are some of the TV preachers who are basically there for trying to get money out of them. And they're saying, or they've seen people standing on street corners yelling about you're going to hell. None of these are very conducive to Christianity. So we're going to be looking at all of the patterns as they've changed, but not just as they changed, but why they changed. Because if you don't know why, then you cannot adapt to new situations. It's very difficult then. We'll look at traditions. We'll look at traditions that perhaps we should change, perhaps we should throw out. I don't get to make those decisions, but we will examine them. So by the end of the course, the goal, one of the objectives are that you will be able to understand and explain the ever-changing notion of what we call vernacular communication. Excuse me. An ongoing discourse in the church in the 21st century attempts to regain cultural relevance. I will explain what I'm talking about with vernacular communication. We're going to unpack and articulate the evolving ideas of worship. We're going to look at how different groups worship. We're going to demonstrate possible ways to reconcile notions of worship or ideas of worship, service and performance, while understanding the significance of cultural bridge building. We live in a culture that we don't even think about until it goes haywire on us, as it has in the last 6 to 10 months. It's kind of like a fish, doesn't notice the water that it's living in. It's just there. We're going to look at the culture and how that influences us. We come from different cultures. My culture is very conservative, Dutch and German. Some of you, and all of you, come from different cultures than that. And that influences how we see and understand worship. And as a final project, you as a class will design and lead a unique worship experience drawing from the past and the present. But don't let that scare you. You will have plenty of stuff to work with. And I think you will, I think you'll actually enjoy it. The first few times I ran this class, I was totally blown away by what some of the students came up with. Some of them had me laughing, which was their intent. Some of them had me literally in tears. And so you will be able to do that. So the design, everything is designed to be relevant to today. I'm not into theory for theory's sake. It just doesn't work for me. If I can't apply it, if I can't use it, I'm not that interested in it. I think you will, you're going to examine your own churches and congregations. You're going to find things that are foreign to you. I highly recommend that during the semester, 3-4 times, you go to a different church that has a totally different style and simply experience it. We've got lots of those. Richland Lutheran is, their traditions come from the 1500s. Saint Nectarios Orthodox. Their traditions are about 1,000 years old. Christ the King, Roman Catholic. Again, their traditions go back 1,500 years. Grace United Reformed, which is a small church that I doubt any of you have experienced. It's a very, very dry form of worship, or at least it has been. Morning Star Missionary Baptist Church is an African-American church in Pasco. Completely different style of worship. And finally, Beit Emmanuel Messianic Jewish Synagogue. Totally different styles of worship. There will be some written work. I do like research papers, I really do. But I do not assign topics. The topics, you will decide the topic within the construct of the course, and so on. Assignments, things are a little bit different now. I will post on Populi when each assignment is due, and I will check to see that it is time-stamped and date-stamped within the appropriate time limit. If it's not, you better have a very, very good reason. Otherwise, I simply won't accept it and you'll get a 0. You don't want zeros. You don't want zeros at all. You need to know that the college has changed its policies. A grade of C- or lower does not count towards graduation, nor does it count to your degree, nor will it transfer to another university. So that's just where we are. So if you have a disability and you need an accommodation, please let me know. And I will do everything in my power to accommodate that, because my goal is for you to be successful. My goal is for you to learn, to enjoy what you're doing, and to be successful. Okay, this ends segment 2, and segment 3 will be available very shortly.